Hello, 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 hello. How are you doing? How's everybody doing? It's a wonderful Friday. Let's turn the music off. It's good stuff, but we're done with that. Hey, welcome to another Employer Brand Breakdown. I am your host, James Ellis, your employer brand nerd. I'm here to break down employer brands from the outside. It's an important task because ultimately that's how candidates perceive your brand. Right? We know a lot of stuff. We can feel a lot of stuff. We know how the bells and whistles and the machines get made and how the sausage gets made on the inside. But for the candidate, how do they see an employer brand? How do they absorb it? How do we influence their approach? That's what we're all about. And today we're going to talk about an interesting little company, not that little, but an interesting little company out of Canada. We'll get to that in a second. So if you have an idea of what the next company I should do a breakdown on, let me know. I'd love to hear it. This one is a recommendation. So thrilled that it came up to me because it's an unusual company. It's a good opportunity to show some interesting ideas. As always, I am not here to beat anybody up. I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. I'm not here to point and laugh and do the full-on Nelson. Ha ha. It's not about that. I am here to point out what's good, to point out what's interesting, to point out what's working, and where there might be some areas of improvement. Why? I hope it helps people learn. I hope it helps you look at your own employer brand work and say, oh, I see what he's saying. That's how I can elevate my work. That's the plan. That's the hope. I hope you're enjoying this. So let's get into the company at hand. And I have to do a little dance where I figure out how to show the screen, make sure I got the right screen. The company we're going to talk about today is BCLC. That stands for British Columbia Lottery Company. I know it sounds so exciting, right? Here we go, sharing my screen. And there we are. Boom. There we go. BCLC. They are out of British Columbia. Not surprising. And they are what's referred to as a crown corporation, which as an American citizen, don't know what that means exactly. I'm going to approach it as if it's a kind of joint governmental nonprofit for-profit organization, right? It's like a B company, a B Corp, where there's a lot of public good involved in what they're doing, but it's still a company. It's not an actual governmental organization. They have 1,200 people in British Columbia, and they help manage and do the whole gaming thing in that part of Canada. Lotteries, sports betting, casinos. They're managing and supporting all of those things. Now, why that's interesting. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a step back. We're going to take kind of two approaches. We're going to look at this in two different ways because I think there's something they're doing really, really well. And I think there's a couple of things they can kind of do to elevate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the website. We're going to go to LinkedIn and look at what they're doing on LinkedIn and probably come back to the website. I was asked not to look at job postings. They are not ready. That's fine. No big deal. I can still see a lot of work that goes into this stuff just on those two platforms. So let's dig in. BCLC, corporate site, news, blah, blah, blah. Hey, they're giving $1.3 billion back to the communities, yada, yada, yada. Great stuff. Good, 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 good. It's a pretty nice site. It's clean. It's not overly fussy. It is clean. And we go down here to careers. And okay, so what's interesting here, and we're going to talk more deeply about it once we go to LinkedIn, but it's a pretty straightforward career site. In fact, it probably looks a lot like some of your career sites in that it's got a header called careers or a hero image or a hero paragraph about we're hiring and this is who we are. There's a section called why work at BCLC. There's some pillars here: innovative work, professional development, purpose, right? Standard employer brand stuff. Loving it. You've got total rewards, co-op opportunities, where we are, apply now, better together. There's a lot of messaging here, a decent DEI statement. There's nothing objectionable here at all, which is faint praise. And I apologize because it is faint praise. For those of you who have been through a career site redo, you know that it is a gauntlet of decision makers and stakeholders and people who have opinions who don't really understand employer branding, and some of them don't quite understand recruiting. I'm just trying to be honest here. I'm not saying you don't. I'm saying there's probably people in your process, in your project, in the room who don't really quite get what recruiting is, what it's like to hire. For example, the executive who hasn't had to look for a job in about 10 years and doesn't understand the realities on the ground anymore. Just one example, right? Just one character in the room whose opinion you have to manage to get this career site up. Now, usually what happens in a career site project is you get a lot of people in the room, and there's a lot of people with more power than you. But for the most part, unless they're the CEO, and the CEOs usually aren't in these rooms, But unless they're on the C-suite, they don't have the political power to say, I must have that. Yes, I have to do that. But directors, VPs, even associate directors, they have the power to say no. They have this weird veto power because everybody knows that if they decide to pick a hill and fight on it, they veto it. They say, I forbid. By the way, veto is Latin for I forbid. Yes, you're learning Latin here on Employer Brand Breakdown. Isn't that nice? I know. Just a little extra service I provide. They veto a feature, a function, an idea, a photo, a word, whatever it is. It's not at all worth it to fight it out just because it's the right word, just because it's a better word. You just go, okay, I will accept that, and away you go. Put enough people in a room and they veto enough stuff, and what you're left with is some weak sauce, some pretty thin gruel, right? It's not strong. There's not a lot of personality. It's completely serviceable. It is what many, many career sites look like. Okay. So not to pick on them because they've gone through what I imagine you have gone through once and you understand how they got to this. Where things get interesting is over on the LinkedIn channel. So I'm going to go over here and click on LinkedIn. Here is their LinkedIn channel. Yes, it is LinkedIn channel. I'll quibble. I'll say that banner could be better. It's not popping. The logo's tiny. And frankly, human faces and graphics are better than photos of buildings. Just how I see the world. But that's really more my opinion than anything else. Let's go into posts. Now, posts are important because they are the pulse of what the company is doing today. That career site, I don't know. Did they launch it last week? Did they launch it last year? Did they launch it 3 years ago? It's really hard to tell. Career sites don't change very often because they were such a bear to get out the door the first time. No one looks forward to say, I can't wait to revisit these questions in 3 months. No one says that. No one in their right mind says, that was fun, let's do it again. They avoid that stuff. Consequently, career sites tend to stagnate. They tend to be a little stale. They tend to be the same for a very long period of time. If you think about the posts on LinkedIn where you're doing some good recruiting, employer branding work, there aren't nearly as many people in the room thinking about what the post is. Usually it's a marketing, social media, employer brand person. They are just trying to fill a channel. They're trying to say what's interesting we could say, and they're running it by maybe somebody in comms just to double check the language, maybe somebody in legal to make sure they're not saying something they shouldn't, depending on your company. But the litany, the gauntlet, as it were, of getting content on LinkedIn, much easier. So consequently, it's a little more robust. It's a little more interesting. It's a little more raw sometimes. Even when it's polished, it's not serving a dozen different masters. It's trying to tell its own story, and there's not a dozen people trying to knock it off its path or polish it up to a point where it's boring. So that's why I like social media. I think it's really interesting to glean the current sense of what the company cares about, is thinking about, is doing in a way that career sites simply can't. So let's look at this. So let's go to most recent, because that's the way I do it. So the most recent post is this, the benefits of low carbon commuting. Now, many companies, many companies are happy to tell you their commitment to greenhouse emissions, to carbon capture, to climate change, or blah, blah, blah. They're going to do something at some point, right? Kind of like the way The Rock and Oprah are committed to giving other people's money to save Hawaii, right? It's a nice thing to say, but most of them are just saying it. But not here. Okay, hold on. Here's a video talking about commuting. Commuting is a very grassroots activity. You do it, I do it. I mean, I'm in my dining room, so my commute's very short. But everybody commutes to work one way or another. And in this world, cars are a very common way of doing that. And if you can say, let's take a few people out of cars and stick them on bikes and stick them on buses or trains, that's a good thing. Suddenly, it's not just we care about the environment. It's this is something we are choosing to do to help the environment. Wow, that's specific. That is real. That is, it's not raw. It's not exciting. It's not blowing my hair back, right? But it's still way more credible than most of the stuff you see on career sites and most of the stuff you see on social media. So that's interesting. And then I go here and say, okay, the NFL season openers tomorrow, so it's the perfect time to share the news that GameSense is going to be featured in stadiums. Okay, kind of a consumer model more than anything else, but I am noticing that they have to point out content that is connected to larger private gaming companies like MGM. We'll come back to that. Okay, let's see, over a week away from our webinar with United Way Social Purpose, and we highlight how risk and internal audit operations social purpose companies. So they're really showing that this company that cares about gambling, sometimes referred to as the sin kind of industries, right? You've heard of sin tax, like they put the tax on cigarettes and alcohol and gambling because governments don't want you to do it too much. These are sin industries, as it were. This is a sin industry about social good. Huh. Now think, for some of you, you may have watched football last night. It was the first game of the season. I didn't. I missed it. It was my birthday, so I was out having dinner. But football games invariably have ads about gambling. You know, they got FanDuel and DraftKings and Bob's Big House of making bets and whatever, right? And those commercials are splashy, they're shiny. Sometimes they have celebrity spokespeople or famous athletes. They make these crazy and outlandish kind of offers. Hey, if you bet $4.50, we can make sure it can pay off to more than $4,000, or right? They're really aggressively pushing this stuff out. Adam, I'll talk to you later. A quick guest appearance by Adam Posner, everyone, who has no idea he's on this. Here we have a social good company talking about carbon, talking about how to create social purpose, creating win-wins for the greater good. Can you imagine a DraftKings? Think of a recent DraftKings commercial and then them saying, we're trying to create win-wins for the greater good. That doesn't happen. Think about a casino talking about win-wins. No. Casinos suggest that you could win, but mostly they're winning, right? No, there's a reason why they didn't record We Are the World in Las Vegas. Las Vegas gambling is about me. Here they are talking about social good. That's really interesting because to me, a brand position should show how you're a most or an only, right? You are the most aggressive gambling company in the world. You are the most innovative gambling company in the world. You're the highest status gambling company in the world. Or you're the only gambling company talking about social good. That's a strong brand position. Think about it like a car. You knew that in the 60s and 70s, cars got bigger and bigger, and they had all this chrome, and they were super shiny, and no one cared about fuel efficiency. Fuel's cheap. Do you see how much? Like pennies for a gallon. It's cheaper than water. Goodness gracious. Why would I worry about gas guzzling? Why would I worry about fuel economy? And American cars just got bigger and bigger and less fuel efficient. And then the late 70s hits and bam, fuel efficiency is driving the day. The gas crunch is what made Toyotas and Hondas, which were smaller, more fuel efficient cars, more reliable cars, suddenly they became more popular because they were they were the only companies talking about fuel efficiency, the only companies talking about reliability in an industry that was about big and sexy and chrome and cool and Mustang and muscle car and horsepower and, you know, the cubic inches of the engine, right? In a world of power, they were the ones talking about usefulness. They were the ones talking about reliability and fuel efficiency. They were the only in that industry. And when the world kind of tipped a little bit, suddenly they are in a strong position. That's how you position a company. Now, I don't know how intentional all this is, but as a candidate, I'm reading that this is not a company competing with a FanDuel. This is not a company competing with a DraftKings because they don't sound anything like them, right? Burger King and McDonald's sound very much alike. The differences are subtle. Nike and Adidas, or Adidas, depending on where you're from, they're very similar. They sound very similar. Minor variances to kind of tell the difference between the two because they're competing head to head. This is a company, BCLC is not a company competing with FanDuel. They're a company competing with charities. They're a company competing with B Corps. They're a company, competing against social good companies where they can be the only one talking about the fun of gaming and the excitement of gambling in a social good space, or they're the only gambling company talking about social good. They've carved out a space for themselves where they're kind of alone, and that's a good thing, right? So they're doing good work, I don't know how intentionally they're quite doing that, but it's clean, it's nice. I get it. This is separating themselves from other companies. So that's incredibly powerful. It's a great example of how positioning can happen. Again, sometimes intentionally, sometimes just a natural expression of how you think and how the company reacts, kind of positioning themselves against other companies. Now, let's go back to the career site. The career site isn't doing a great job furthering that position. In a lot of ways, it feels like social media is talking about social good. They're doing these amazing things, and they're corporate site talks about social good and how much they're giving back, but their career site doesn't seem to connect that. New ideas and fresh thinking to help us shape the future of gambling. Okay. Providing gambling entertainment since 1985, passionate about delivering exceptional experiences. Okay, we're looking for purpose-driven. It's a little buried, right? It's not paying out the promises being made or suggested on the social media. So there's a bit of a disconnect. That said, it doesn't take much to take that idea and bring it up to the surface a bit more, to be more specific about how, if this is the thing that makes you different, you got to lean into it. You got to prove it before you can also start in with innovative work and professional development, all this other stuff. To me, I'd have reordered those pillars and put purpose first. Now, again, I'm looking at it from the outside, so I don't have perfect knowledge. I don't know, maybe they have a different competitor set than I'm thinking of, and this makes sense. But this is the power of positioning. It's a great example of how you use positioning. Couple of minor critiques, or in fact, let's give it just one quick one. I get why they're using these graphics, these animated graphics. They're visually branded, right? They're the same colors as the logo. They got the orange, the red, and the green here in them. You can kind of show some demographic variance, right? Here's what looks like a black person, I guess, but it's really just a blob. It's just a colorful blob. Here's a white person, looks like a colorful blob. Here's a black person, colorful blob, right? They're all just colorful blobs. They're not really people. You can make these colorful blobs look like anyone. So they don't provide a lot of credibility about what it's really like. Anybody can make a picture of people being happy at work, but that doesn't mean that's any suggestion that people are actually happy at work. You can show pictures of innovation and drawings of innovation, but does that mean people are innovative at work? So for me, I get the instinct to go graphic. It's safe, right? It's balanced. You can make sure you've got a good demographic balance. You can kind of say the stuff you want. You can have some control over it. But I'm going to tell you, I don't think it has the credibility of a photo. And they have some photos down here showing good diversity of demographics. I like that people are smiling, but, in this one, not smiling too much. I mean, these people are very happy with whatever this product is, and these people are thrilled with this printout. She just is, she's glad to be learning. And I'm good with that. I like a little variance in that. Better together. Okay, clearly staged. All these photos are staged, but it seems like they came from that office. Like, it's not some stock art. That's really them. So there's points for that. I think what the value is saying, how do we turn and connect what we're saying on social media, which for most people is the first kind of like, oh, what do they like to work at? That's kind of their lead generation. That's kind of their first impression. They got to prove it out on their career site. So finding a way to either connect the dots or to make sure they're both aligned in the direction that says this is the space that we can occupy. This is the place in which we are the most or an only, and then reinforcing that. But they've got good perks. They've got more proof, more data or more information around their perks, which I like. There's not a lot of numbers, which I'm always like specifics and specificity here, but I get that it's hard to do it sometimes. Giving back to pay it forward. Again, there's this sense that it's about the larger community. It's just kind of pushed down a little bit. So I'm wondering, maybe the thinking here was, well, we're competing against other charities, in which case saying that you're giving it, paying it forward is a weak message compared to a charity or a nonprofit in which all the money is going to that work, right? It's a balancing act. And that's why position is a function of competition. If I don't know who the competition is, I don't know if this idea of purpose and together and we're making a better world and a social good is the right position. What I do know is that's the position that's coming through on their social media, but it's not quite coming through on their career site. All right. That's what I had to show you. I think BCLC is doing a great job kind of talking it up. They're facing the same kind of challenges I faced in my past. I suspect you are facing probably right now. Really good example of this kind of work. So thanks so much for suggesting it. I appreciate it. This is a great kind of story to tell. So speaking of stories to tell, what's the next story I should tell? Tell me who I should review next. I'm not here to make anybody feel bad, right? I'm not trying to hurt anybody. This is not about feelings. This is about, hey, look, it's an opinion. It's a perspective that you might not have access to. So next week I'm at RecFest. So the next one we're going to do may be very influenced by what I see at RecFest. We'll see how that goes. Otherwise, let me know what I should be talking about. Let me know what companies I should be looking at. How can I kind of break down your brand or someone else's brand to be valuable to help you come up with ideas on how to make your employer brand stronger? that's what I had to say. Thanks so much. Have a great Friday or whenever you watch this. And I'll see you next time. Bye.